Okay, you're going to have to forgive me if I'm looking a little rumpled today. I've been up on a ladder washing ceilings and I'm taking a break for a few minutes, and I'm going to make a little video while I'm taking a break. Today I wanted to talk about a video that Dave Canterbury made over a year ago. It was his Survival Adventure Network, and it was cold weather and hypothermia. I'm going to link it in the comments, but if you don't have time to watch it, then I would highly recommend watching it. If you don't have time to watch it, I'll give you a quick overview. The scenario was he took 3 volunteers out into the woods, and with EMT standing by in a controlled situation, he had them all jump in a water hole in 40-degree water and get completely soaked from head to toe, and then they had to go and affect their survivability in the woods, as he says, when the overnight temperature was below 20 degrees. It was not pretty to watch. You could very quickly see the effects of hypothermia. When your body core temperature drops rapidly enough, you lose the ability to think. And even the experienced guys had a really rough time. Their brain was screaming to get warm. They went and started trying to start a fire immediately with a few sticks. They'd get it lit, it would go out. They'd get it lit again, it would go out. They had a really hard time getting dry. They never really had a chance to get a good shelter built because they were too busy trying to tend their little fire. The guys that were experienced had a really rough night. The guy that was inexperienced, if there hadn't been EMTs there, would have been dead by morning. It was pretty clear by 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning that he was dying. The experienced guys had worn all synthetics, and they were cold, but they were eventually able to get mostly dry. They got their base layer dry, they got their nylon pants and shirts dry. One of the guys managed to get his coat mostly dry. The other guy had a frozen solid stiff coat in the morning. They both had wool socks. It was the only wool layer they had, and they managed to get those socks dry. Neither one really managed to get their shoes dry by morning, and they managed to get a little cat nap here and there, but they were pretty cold. The inexperienced guy came into the woods in a cotton t-shirt, cotton blue jeans, cotton socks, a pair of duck boot type boots that blew out halfway through, and an insulated parka that, once the insulation was wet, was absolutely no good to him. By 2 o'clock in the morning, his wet pants and wet socks had frozen fast to the ground, and he couldn't stand. His legs were completely numb, his feet were completely numb, and they were weak as jelly, and he couldn't get up. And the EMTs came in and wrapped blankets around him and put a reflective tarp under him and behind him and built up a huge fire and rewarmed him. By morning he could stand, but he was pretty weak. And I don't know how they got him out of there. He didn't even have shoes left to walk out in. It's pretty tough to watch. And as somebody who has worked on horse farms most of my life, a good bit of my life, I thought I knew how to keep warm in the cold. I've been out in the rain, I've been out in the wind, I've been out in cold so bad I had to chip frozen horse turds out of frozen urine in the middle of stalls and chip 5-gallon blocks of ice out of the buckets. But I realized how much my ability to keep warm was predicated on always having a car full of clothes close by. And if I got rained on, I could grab a change of clothes out of the car and go in the barn office and get changed. Can't do that if you're hiking or hunting or fishing up a creek and you lose your balance and fall in the water. You might get stuck out there overnight, and you don't have a car full of clothes quickly, and your pack went underwater with you, and everything in it is wet too. If you were smart enough to pack it in a dry bag, you might have a change of clothes, but then again, you might not. And so this video really kind of made me think about what I had believed for a long time. I also had, this last fall, my family and I took hunter education, and we had to watch a cold water and hypothermia video on that too, and it was true stories of hunters and fishermen who didn't make it. And that was pretty hard to watch too, especially knowing they were true stories and these guys really did die. They found their bodies later with all their clothes stripped off because hypothermia makes you feel like you're overheated, and so they had pulled off all their clothes and their corpse was frozen to the ground with very little on. And it was a hard thing to watch, and I'm going to link at least the trailer to that video on here too. I can't get the whole video. So both of these made me start rethinking clothing, and I went and did a lot of research, and I did a lot of research on the Army ECWCS system, and I'll post some of that on here as well. And I thought about that Army ECWCS system a lot, and I used a lot of the mentality behind it, even if I didn't use all of the system. Looking at it, I figured it's a very good system for the Afghan mountains. It's very good for places where things freeze and stay frozen. But through the middle section of this country, through from about southern Pennsylvania to about North Carolina and a belt all the way west to probably Iowa, it doesn't just get cold and freeze and stay there. It rains and you get soaking wet, and then you may end up going down to 10 degrees that night with a wind chill factor, and that's all in a 24-hour period. And so the ECWCS system is great if you don't get wet, but there's nothing in there to keep you warm if you do get wet. If you fall in a hole and your Gore-Tex floods from underneath and all of your synthetics inside of it get wet, you're now sunk. You've got nothing to keep you warm. It has no insulative value whatsoever when it's wet. It will dry fairly quickly, but during that time that it's drying, it's going to be taking heat out of your body by evaporative cooling, and you're going to be in really bad shape. If you live long enough for it to dry, it'd be great. The more I research, the more I'm settling on wool, because wool retains 75% of its ability to keep you warm even when it's dripping. You could fall in a water hole and come up out of it in wool and wring the worst of it out, and it would keep you 75% warm while you're getting your fire and while you're building your shelter, whereas your synthetics and your cotton are going to be drawing heat off of you all that time and making your brain scream that you've got to have a fire right now when you haven't even gathered wood or built the fire yet. You've got to keep you warm enough to actually construct the fire, and to actually get a tinder bundle, and to actually split your wood and get the dry side exposed if it's wet out. You need that factor of time, and wool will grant you that factor of time. So I've started rethinking my whole family's wardrobe based on that and rebuilding it all. I have incorporated some ECWCS layers. We've got the Gore-Tex layer. I'm working on building a soft shell layer for all of us. I've been building the synthetic uniform layer. Unfortunately, those kinds of fabrics, those polycottons and nylon cottons that shed water pretty well, are Teflon coated. I make most of our clothing. I can't always buy those fabrics in anything other than Army surplus camo, and if I wear camo all the time, let me tell you, my kid's pediatrician is going to look at me pretty stupidly, as will my friends at church. So I've kind of started incorporating some of the thinking behind that Army ECWCS system into everyday wear, because the crisis doesn't always happen when you're planning it. The crisis might happen on your way back from your kid's flu shot, and you need to be prepared for it. It could be that your car breaks down on the way home and you've got to be out in the rain for some time. I've had that happen to me. Got pinned down in a tornado once and ended up with a flat tire and a bent wheel and was out in the rain for quite some time. And let me tell you, it can get pretty cold even in July if you're wet all night. So I'm thinking in terms of wearing wicking layers even when I'm just around town. And what that has meant is I've incorporated a lot of linen into our wardrobe. I can buy linen to make our everyday clothes out of. I've incorporated some Army synthetics. I've incorporated Gen 2 base layer. I'm not going with Gen 3. I actually really like polypropylene better than the polar fleece, even the micro fleece. And I may at some point do some Gen 3, but right now I'm mostly doing Gen 2. I'm getting most of the cotton out of our wardrobe. We still wear it around the house, but less and less of it. I'm still making some denim jeans, and I've got a cotton t-shirt on right now, but more and more I'm going for linen and synthetic wicking and woolens. I'm going to be talking more about fabrics in the next couple of videos I do. I'm going to be putting a lot of tags on this video because I'm heading in what I'm doing is going to be useful not only to prepping and hunting and fishing and boating, but it will also be useful to those who are wanting to learn to sew, and the discussion of fabric is going to be useful to people who are sewing for everyday wear, not necessarily for fashion, but for everyday wear. So if you follow this video here because you're interested in learning to sew, I'm going to be, in the next video or two, I'm going to be laying some fabrics out. I'm going to be using a camera instead of the webcam, and I'm going to be laying fabrics out on a table and talking about them a little bit and some of the properties of the various fabrics and the trade-offs, the pros and cons of working with them, especially if you're a beginner. And then I'm going to start getting into sewing machine maintenance, how to thread a machine, how to hand sew, and then I'm going to go into actually making some garments. What I ended up doing as far as our top layer for our clothing, I haven't done Primaloft. Primaloft is really expensive, and it's also, I worry about if it's wet, it's not going to be much good to us. So what I've ended up doing, I got my husband an old Woolrich, Pennsylvania tuxedo off of eBay, paid $40 for a blanket weight pair of pants and a blanket weight coat and a blanket weight hat, which is quite warm for him. For my daughter and I, they don't make those things in women's or children's sizes. So I took a little bit of Dave Canterbury's, one of the things he did on a coat made out of an army blanket. Sarge Faria did it as well. I took a little bit of the, I can't remember the name of the company. I'll see if I can find it to link it here. The coat he really likes, it has the triple pockets, including the hand warmer pocket and hood, which is also made out of army blankets. I kind of mashed those together, and then I ended up using a Revolutionary War shift, what women and children wore, to make the basic pattern for the coat, and it worked really well. And it's really conservative of a fabric, and it's very comfortable. It gives you a lot of ease, especially under the arms if you're hunting or bow hunting or something of that sort. It gives you a lot more ease than the way they built it, and gives you a lot more range of motion. So eventually I'm going to bring those out and show those to everybody, and I may even, my child's about to outgrow hers, so I may even make another one and show you how I did it if anybody wants to copy it. So there's going to be a lot more actual doing stuff coming up in the next few videos. I've kind of got a plan, but I'm kind of trying to lay out a case for my my thinking through all of this, how I came to these conclusions, so you can kind of tell where I'm going with it and decide whether that works for you or not. It may not, and it may. If you're up north, it may be that just using a straight ECWCS system might work better for you, but if you're not up north, if you're in this band where it tends to rain a lot in the winter, you might find that my way of thinking on it is useful to you. Thanks for watching, and thanks for your time.